The sun rose over a small town that seemed quiet, ordinary, and untouched by the weight of human heartbreak. Yet, hidden in the middle of this stillness was a storm about to break loose. On a warm Saturday morning, with white roses carefully arranged at the steps of a grand hotel and a shiny black limousine waiting outside, an event was about to unfold that no guest, no groom, and no bride could ever have predicted. For while weddings are often celebrations of love, family, and fresh beginnings, this particular one carried the heavy stench of pride, cruelty, and a plan to humiliate. The groom had sent an invitation not out of goodwill, but out of spite. He wanted his ex-wife, the woman who had sacrificed everything for him only to be left with nothing, to come and see what he called his real happily ever after. He wanted her to feel small, forgotten, and unworthy. But what he never expected was that she would show up not broken, not weeping, not weak but stronger than ever, stepping out of a limousine with 3 little girls by her side. Daughters he had abandoned, whose beauty, confidence, and smiles would leave everyone in stunned silence. The story begins with Emma, a woman whose gentle spirit and hard-working nature often made her seem invisible in a world that only praised wealth and status. She had fallen in love with Daniel when they were young. Against the advice of her friends and family, she poured her heart, energy, and even her meager savings into building a future with him. Daniel came from a wealthy family, but he wanted to rise even higher, to make a name for himself. For years, Emma supported his dreams. She worked extra shifts as a waitress, took on cleaning jobs at night, and even skipped meals to make sure he had what he needed to chase his career. She believed in him more than she believed in herself, seeing his potential as their shared future. She was the silent partner in his success, the foundation upon which he built his empire, never asking for credit, only for his love in return. But when success finally touched his hands, Daniel changed. The man she loved disappeared, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. Money filled the spaces where love once lived. Instead of cherishing Emma for her unwavering loyalty and sacrifice, he began to see her as a burden, a living reminder of his past struggles and humble beginnings. The warmth in their marriage grew cold, replaced by a chilling distance. One day, without much warning, Daniel filed for divorce. He was swift and ruthless. He left Emma with nothing but an old car that barely ran and a small apartment whose rent she could barely pay. He took everything they had built together and claimed it as his own. Heartbroken but determined to survive, Emma faced the world alone. Just weeks after the divorce papers were finalized, she discovered she was pregnant. It wasn't just one child, but triplets. Fear nearly crushed her. The weight of her new reality was immense. How would she raise 3 children alone with no money, no partner, and no support system? For a moment, she felt like drowning in despair. Yet, as she placed a hand on her stomach, something inside her shifted. A fierce, protective instinct ignited a fire within her. She realized that although she had been discarded by the man she loved, she was not powerless. She was going to be a mother, and those 3 little lives depending on her would give her a reason to fight harder than she ever had before. And so began her years of intense struggle. Her days were a blur of juggling 2 jobs, while her nights were spent rocking 3 crying infants in her arms. There were countless moments of pure exhaustion where she felt she couldn't take another step, where she wanted to collapse and give up. But then she would look at the faces of her daughters, and she would find the strength to push forward. They were her reason, her motivation, her entire world. Meanwhile, Daniel climbed the social ladder, moving in elite circles of wealth and prestige. He never once called to ask about Emma or the children he had left behind. To his new friends, he spoke of his freedom from that poor woman, painting himself as the victim of a marriage that had held him back from his true potential. He conveniently erased her contributions from his life story. When he met Sophia, a young woman from an equally wealthy and influential family, his ego soared. Here was his chance to prove to the world that he had upgraded, that he was finally where he deserved to be. As their wedding date approached, Daniel, driven by a toxic mix of arrogance and bitterness, decided on a final, cruel act. He would invite Emma. He pictured her showing up in cheap, worn-out clothes, perhaps having to borrow money just for a bus ticket. He imagined her watching from the sidelines, heartbroken and defeated, while he married a woman of what he considered real worth. In his twisted mind, this would seal Emma's humiliation and be the ultimate proof of his victory. He wanted her to see how far he had risen and how low she had sunk. But Emma had been walking her own path quietly, far away from Daniel's shallow world. She had raised her daughters with an abundance of love, discipline, and faith. She instilled in them not just good manners, but the courage to believe in themselves, to know their own worth regardless of their circumstances. Despite their financial struggles, Emma managed to secure a job at a small design studio. Her natural creativity and tireless work ethic soon attracted attention. After years of perseverance, saving every penny she could, she took a leap of faith and opened her own boutique. What started as a small corner store soon grew into a respected and successful business in town. She didn't flaunt her success, but she no longer lived in the shadows of her painful past. Her daughters, now 6 years old, were beautiful, bright, and full of life. They were her greatest achievement. When the thick, cream-colored wedding invitation arrived, embossed with gold lettering, Emma nearly threw it in the trash. The audacity of it stung. But then she thought of the years of humiliation she had silently endured, the cruel way Daniel had abandoned them, and the whispers of people who once pitied her. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. It was about showing her daughters that no one, absolutely no one, had the right to define their worth. And so, with a calm and unshakable resolve, she decided to attend. The morning of the wedding was bright and golden. Guests arrived in sleek cars, women in glamorous dresses and men in expensive suits. Daniel stood tall and proud in his white tuxedo, soaking in the admiration of his friends and business partners. Sophia, glowing in her fitted designer gown, smiled at the cameras flashing around her. Everything was unfolding perfectly, exactly as Daniel had planned, until the sound of another limousine pulling up at the entrance turned heads. People whispered, wondering which important guest had arrived so late. Slowly, the chauffeur stepped out and opened the rear door. Out came 3 little girls dressed in matching, elegant yellow dresses, holding hands. Their curls bounced as they walked confidently onto the red carpet, their innocent smiles lighting up the entrance. Behind them, Emma emerged. She wore a deep green gown that highlighted her grace, her figure elegant, her face radiant. Her eyes were calm, but they held an undeniable strength. Gasps filled the air. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like a wave. Daniel's self-satisfied smirk faded instantly, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief. Sophia's perfect smile stiffened. Emma, holding her daughter's hands, walked forward with a poise that commanded more attention than the bride herself. The groom's face turned pale. For the first time in years, a flicker of guilt, or perhaps fear, flashed in his eyes. But his pride refused to let him falter. "Why is she here?" People heard him whisper angrily, though the invitation in her hand was his own doing. Emma was no longer the broken, abandoned woman he remembered. She was a mother, a fighter, a successful business owner, and a woman who had risen from the ashes with grace. The guests who had once heard Daniel's cruel stories about her could now see the truth with their own eyes. They saw the deep respect in the way her daughters looked up at her, the way she carried herself without a trace of bitterness, and the quiet strength that made her glow brighter than any jewel in the room. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the comparison unfolding in everyone's mind was not in her favor. Emma did not need diamonds or wealth to shine. Her dignity, her resilience, and the living, breathing proof of her journey, those 3 little girls, were more powerful than any fortune. The ceremony continued, but the air had changed completely. The perfect illusion Daniel had constructed was shattered. Whispers followed Emma everywhere she went. Some guests discreetly approached her to congratulate her on her beautiful daughters and her success. Others, who had once believed Daniel's lies, apologized with their eyes. The triplets laughed and played, their innocence melting the hearts of everyone around them. Emma simply smiled, knowing she had nothing left to prove. Daniel had tried to disgrace her, but instead, he had only revealed his own emptiness and cruelty to the world. Emma's presence was not an act of revenge. It was a testimony of survival, love, and transformation. She sat through the vows without a hint of bitterness, never once trying to ruin the event, because she didn't need to. Her very existence, her success, and her happiness were enough to rewrite the story. By the end of the night, the one detail people remembered most wasn't Sophia's dress, the lavish flowers, or even the wedding vows. It was the moment Emma arrived, holding the hands of 3 beautiful daughters, her head held high. The official photographs inadvertently captured that instant of shock on Daniel's face, the awe in the crowd, and the undeniable radiance of a woman who had risen far above cruelty. Her victory wasn't loud or vengeful. It was silent, graceful, and absolute.